And so too should Congresswoman Pelosi, instead of saying the 2016 election was, quote, hijacked. Quote, hijacked.
Thank you.
The left has always been thought of as the voice of the people, the voice of the downtrodden, the voice of the working class, even though, in my personal opinion, they've never actually represented that. They've always represented control and authoritarianism, okay? But what we're going to see today, of course, is an interesting debate where the left, represented by Nancy Pelosi, is going to be completely exposed for the totalitarians that they are. Surprisingly enough, by Winston Marshall. He was the member of Mumford Sons who ended up quitting because he liked the wrong books and liked the wrong tweets. Of course, all the leftists got really outraged during the power of their cancer culture era, and as a result, of course, he resigned from the band. But here he is going to be confronting Nancy Pelosi to her face at the Oxford Union. However, before we begin, don't forget to like and comment on this video. It helps me beat the YouTube gatekeepers, so let's go ahead and check it out.
The proposition says that it is a threat to democracy. It didn't say it will cause it. It said it is a threat. So remember what the proposition is. Now listen attentively to our two friends here in their description of populism, and our white tie and tail gentleman and his comments. And you know what? They make a very compelling argument. It would have been so appropriate 200 years ago in the time of Andrew Jackson. It's an old notion of populism. For today, I always like to put down temporal markers. For today, how populism weighs in is in a way that is different. Voltaire said, if you want to debate with me, define your terms. Well, let's define what is happening with populism today. Populism is sprung on some of the people that have been named here, put forth with an ethno-nationalist populism. In our country, we see nationalism, isolationism. We had a fight to get the bill that we got last week, and generated by an ethnic negativity about immigrants, yeah, incumbents do, immigrants, people who are different from them, these people, and the rest.
So Nancy Pelosi basically is arguing here that, yeah, populism supporting the average person, the normal people, the supposed downtrodden, is a bad thing because it's becoming xenophobic. Because right now, of course, here in America, we're facing a very serious problem where millions, possibly billions of our tax dollars are being spent on illegal aliens coming into this country. So all the average working class people, all of their tax dollars are going towards that group. But Nancy Pelosi says, oh, it's xenophobic, etc., to have any of these feelings towards the mass voter replacement happening right now currently in this country. So now let's jump into Winston Marshall's blistering response. Let's check this out.
Populism has become a word used synonymously with racist. We've heard ethno-nationalist, with bigot, with hillbilly, redneck, with deplorables. Elites use it to show their contempt for ordinary people. This is a recent change. Not long ago, Barack Obama, while still president at the North America's Leaders Summit in June 2016, he took umbrage with the notion that Trump be called a populist. How could Trump be called a populist? He doesn't care about working people. If anything, Obama argued he was the populist. If anything, Obama argued Bernie was the populist. It was Bernie who'd spent 5 decades fighting for working people. But Trump. Something curious happens. If you watch Obama's speeches after that point, more and more recently, he uses the word populist interchangeably with strongman, with authoritarian. The word changes meaning. It becomes a negative, a pejorative, a slur. To me, populism is not a dirty word.
Before we continue, I do want to mention, what are you going to do with your dollar? Joe Biden, of course, is printing more cash than ever, causing massive inflation and devaluation of our currency. So how can you protect your investments? Well, you can go to Genesis Gold Group and convert your 401k or IRA into a gold-backed retirement account. And of course, you can access them by going to angryteacher.com or by calling 1-800-200-4653 to take control of your future. Get gold-backed securities, protect your dollar, and get back on the gold standard. And by the way, Genesis Gold Group is a faith-based organization, so you can feel confident that you are not investing in some woke corporation. Now, let's get back to it. We're calling out the basic fact that the left always does this. Whenever they start to lose the argument, in this case, losing the idea that they in fact represent the populace, what do? They change the definition of the word and say, oh, populism is actually a bad thing. And anybody who espouses populism clearly doesn't have your best interests at heart. Leave it to us, the people who want to control every single facet of your lives to make the best decisions for you. So of course, that is by definition anti-democratic.
If the motion was that political violence was a threat to democracy, I'd be on that side of the House. January 6th has been mentioned. A dark day for America indeed. And I'm sure Congresswoman Pelosi will agree that the entire month of June 2020, when the federal courthouse in Portland, Oregon was under siege and under insurrection by radical progressives, those too were dark days for America. Yes?
There is no equivalence there. So, yes.
So you don't agree? Well, it's fine, you don't agree, that's fine.
But it is not like what happened on January 6th, which was an insurrection incited by the President of the United States.
So you don't agree? But you'll condemn those days. My point, though, is that all political movements are susceptible to violence and indeed insurrection. And if we were arguing that fascism was a threat to democracy, I'd be on that side of the House.
So I love how he brings up the idea that, yeah, remember all that stuff happening in the summer of 2019, right? When they were burning down federal courthouses, they were burning down police stations, when people were out there rioting in the streets and causing billions of dollars in property damage. But of course, Nancy Pelosi will not condemn any of that. Instead, she's going to come out and falsely say that Donald Trump incited a riot, something he has not been convicted of and hasn't even been charged with. And then, of course, all the clapping seals from both sides of the House here at Oxford actually join in and say, yes, that's true. Well, they're not from America, so I won't expect them to know the intricacies of what happened, like, Nancy Pelosi not calling in the National Guard when Donald Trump requested it in advance of the protests that were going to be happening there at the Capitol. And of course, we have all the recent information coming out about certain FBI plants possibly being in the crowd and egging on all types of things happening. So we're not going to get into any of that, and I wouldn't expect any of these people who are only getting their information from the mainstream media to understand any of those things.
Before COVID, intelligence services colluded with big tech to have Trump suspended off Twitter. Yes, the same platform which hosted the Taliban and Ayatollah deaf to Israel Khomeini, they thought the president crossed the line when he tweeted on Jan 6th, quote, "Remain peaceful, no violence, respect the law and our great men and women in blue." That's a quote. You may be thinking now that Trump is a populist. You are right. He didn't accept the 2020 elections, and he should have. So should Hillary in 2016, so should Brussels, and so should Westminster in 2016, and so too should Congresswoman Pelosi, instead of saying the 2016 election was, quote, hijacked. Quote, hijacked. Thank you.
That we don't accept the results of it.
Okay.
So yes, Donald Trump currently is the head of the populist movement in America, and it shows because he just magically got censored by all of the big tech companies at the same time in conjunction with the government, who happens to be run by a whole bunch of leftists. But I love the way that Winston Marshall points out that, hey, if you're going to go ahead and call out Trump on the 2020 election, then why don't you go back to 2016 and change your point of view? Stop saying that it was stolen, that it was rigged. And Nancy Pelosi, of course, comes out and says, it was, despite the fact that she actually was the head of the House during investigations into Donald Trump that didn't find any evidence of that. So yes, Nancy Pelosi, why don't you please come out and make a public statement that Donald Trump won legally, fair, and square in 2016 before you start calling everybody crazy on my side who calls shenanigans in 2020.
What about the mainstream media let me read you some mainstream media headlines. The New Yorker, the day before the 2016 election. The case against democracy. The Washington Post, the day after the election. The problem with our government is democracy. The LA Times, June 2017. The British election is a reminder of the perils of too much democracy. Vox, June 2017. The two eminent political scientists say the problem with democracy is voters. New York Times, June 2017. The problem with participatory democracy is the participants. Mainstream media elites are part of a class who don't just disdain populism, they disdain the people. If the Democrats had put half their energy into delivering for the people, Trump wouldn't even have a chance in 2024. He shouldn't have a chance. You've had power for 4 years. From the fabricated Steele dossier to trying to take him off the ballot in both Maine and Colorado, the Democrats are the anti-Democrat party.
This is completely indicative of the left. Whenever they don't get their way, what's the first thing they're going to do? They're going to run out there and say, oh, it's the voters. You're the ones with the issues, okay? If only we had some elites, some really intelligent people in charge all the time over everything, then the country would be a much better place. So as usual, thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.